I think we can start now. Okay, so I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Alina, who's going to give you a little bit of information about MLA's products.
Grazie Josh, buonasera a tutti, grazie per la partecipazione a quello che ormai è diventato l'appuntamento settimanale. Ci sono tantissime novità per i corsi di formazione, quindi Josh farà tanti corsi per le settimane a venire e ovviamente il calendario con tutta la programmazione è disponibile sul sito. Sempre sul sito, e vi rubo solo 2 minuti prima di passare la parola a Josh, trovate anche questa iniziativa di MLA che è l'anteprima del catalogo vacanze studio, che vi condivido, vi lascio nella chat così magari potete dare un'occhiata. È un'anteprima che include alcuni centri, quindi alcune destinazioni per l'estate 2023 da proporre eventualmente ai vostri studenti a dei prezzi imbattibili, quindi una lista di centri in Inghilterra ma anche in America che propone dei centri a un prezzo molto basso. Quindi l'anteprima è disponibile sul sito e condividerò con voi in questa chat il link, così magari dopo il corso potete dare un'occhiata. Ci sono tantissimi centri, ovviamente le nostre vacanze studio, quindi la nostra formula è all inclusive, quindi corso di lingua incluso nella vacanza studio, tantissime escursioni e anche attività all'interno del college, quindi un catalogo che vuole proporre una lista dei centri molto appealing, a dei prezzi bassi con tanti vantaggi e con solo un acconto di solo 90 euro, quindi è una opportunità da non perdere e magari da condividere con i vostri studenti. Adesso lascio la parola a Josh, così potete iniziare il corso e condivido con voi il link di quest'anteprima nella chat. Grazie a tutti, grazie Josh.
Okay, thank you very much, Alina. Okay. So you'll see that you're going to see that in the chat, so you can link to that and find out some information about our summer courses. Okay. I just want to point out today on the program this webinar was going to be hosted by our MLA blogger Francesca. Unfortunately, she is not able to join us today, so I'm going to be taking the webinar. But I'd like to give her credit for all the material in here. So she prepared it. So I'm hosting. Unfortunately, she can't join us, but we did talk about it together. So I hope, and she's given me the permission to do it without her. Okay. Just to let you know, as always, there will be a certificate of participation and a webinar handout that you'll receive in the next few days. Just to point out to some people that the certificate of participation does count as 4 hours. It does mention 4 hours. Obviously, this webinar is not 4 hours long, but I think you'll notice that the information in the handout has enough website links, other activities that will keep you busy for the full 4 hours. So that's why we give you a certificate for the full 4 hours. Okay. Obviously, the handout will contain all the important information from this webinar, plus useful links, particularly this week, some links about the book itself and things that you could use with other books and the book itself. Okay, so don't worry about getting the slides because all the information will be in the handout. Remember, if you don't receive it, just email us there at Formazione, okay, and I'll make sure you get it. Okay. What we're going to be talking about is a book called Shelter today, and as you can see from the picture, it deals with issues of homelessness. So it is a interesting book to use in classes, I'm sure. Okay? If you don't know the book, we're going to be talking about it a little bit about it today. But I think you'll find a lot of these activities are relevant for other books as well. Okay. Anyway, we're going to look at this book called Shelter. It's a novel from 2021 by Cristina Matheson. It's a book for young readers, so it's aimed at young readers, which deals with a young girl's experience of homelessness in San Francisco. In this webinar, we're going to look at some associated activities with this book and activities that, as I said, could be used even for students who haven't read the book. But it is a very good book, and it is highly rated and reviewed. And I think when you see the book, if you want to read the book, I've even given you a link in the handout where you can read the first chapter. It's very available on Amazon and other bookshops. Okay, I'm not sure if it's translated into Italian, but we're going to be talking about it in the English version anyway. Okay, one activity you could do, obviously, is a book report. Okay, we're going to be talking about it from the point of view of inclusive teaching. So talking about issues of exclusion, inclusion, bullying, homelessness, other problems, things like that, that we would deal with in class, and students are certainly dealing with in class and out of class. Okay. Also about cooperative learning. Okay, we're going to be talking about some reality class, some things that you can do in civics lessons. Okay, and also in incorporation with CLIL teaching. Okay. Just let us know in the chat if you have some favorite books for young readers. I'm sure people are going to tell us about the Harry Potter books and things like this, but let us know if there's other books that you've used that are aimed at young readers, that you've used in class, or even books that were your favorites when you were young, okay? Or if you've got children, your children's favorites, okay? Well, Roberta mentions Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I remember that book very well. Roald Dahl. Yeah, in fact, all Roald Dahl's children's books are fantastic. Okay. Anyway, obviously, we always have some objectives. So by the end of this session, you should be able to better use literature and books to create interesting and inspiring activities. You should be able to plan CLIL lessons using themes from Shelter. As I said, not necessarily the book itself, but the themes brought up from it. So I think you'll be able to generalize. You'll be able to use Shelter to plan inclusive lessons dealing with social issues, and also to plan civics lessons based on the setting of Shelter. Okay. As I said, be able to generalize these a lot. Okay. First of all, you might be asking, since it's not particularly a well-known book, although it was a bestseller in children's literature, young people's literature, who is Cristina Matheson? Okay. Sorry, I beg your pardon. It should be Cristina Matheson. Cristina Matheson lives in San Francisco with her family. She is the author and illustrator of various children's books. The other books on this list: Tap the Magic Tree, Touch the Brightest Star, Plant the Tiny Seed, The Riddle Rainbow. These are books a bit more for children, like young children. They're picture books, so she is an illustrator too. Whereas Shelter's a little bit more for teenagers. Okay, it is her first novel that she's written. Okay. You might be asking where the idea for a book like this came from. She said she was coaching her daughter's soccer team in 2008 in Franklin Square. That's the Franklin Square there, I believe, San Francisco, when she noticed a change in the behavior of some of the students. Even though San Francisco is a city with beautiful landscapes and attractions, whenever the girls and her friends met there, they seemed to be uncomfortable. The writer, Christie, decided to try to understand why this was. After asking them what they were feeling, the children said that they were afraid of the homeless people who used to sleep near there. So she decided to write a book on American society and the issue of poverty and homeless people. Okay. Someone just asked about Squalor Media, Barbara. I think it is a simplified book, so it depends. Maybe the second and third level of Squalor Media might be possible. I'm sure you could, even if you can't use the book with their level of English, I think you should be able to use the themes and things from this webinar, I'm sure. But have a look at the first chapter that I've got a link in the handout, and you can decide whether it's possible. I don't think the language is so difficult. So it's made for teenagers in America, in Britain. So I don't think it's going to be so difficult for your students. Okay, maybe it could really push them though. Yeah. The plot. So the author documents 24 hours in the life of a homeless teenager, her family, and problems faced at school. She focuses on poverty, hunger, friendship, and difficult social relationships. Okay? The main character who we follow throughout the book is Maya, and the story begins with Maya's father having an accident and Maya's mother losing her job. So a sort of problem that could happen to anyone. Okay? Their family has to leave their home and move into a homeless shelter. A shelter like a refuge for people, so they don't have to live on the streets. Okay. As a warm-up activity, could be some things. Read the book and make a summary. Make a book report. So summary would generally just be the plot. A book report could obviously talk about the themes, the characters, the plot, the setting, etc. Okay. And we also have give an oral presentation. I mean, these are ideas that any book you can talk about. So, whether you want to ask students for a book they've read, to be honest, it could even be a comic they've read or a manga they're reading. Make a summary of it, make a report, or even present it orally. Okay? Given that this book is set in San Francisco, okay, it really captures the ups and downs of living in a city like San Francisco. Okay, it's a vibrant city with breathtaking views, but it's also one which hides many places where less fortunate people struggle with a miserable life. You might know San Francisco, obviously, for the Golden Gate Bridge, to know that it's a very famous city close to the tech areas. So it's close to Silicon Valley. It's a very, the houses in San Francisco, I think New York and Los Angeles are some of the most expensive. The property prices are some of the highest in all of America, but it also has a lot of problems with homeless people and drugs and crime and things like this as well. So it's looking at both sides of this. Okay? In one passage that we're going to look at on the next page, for example, we find a suggestive description where Maya describes seeing the Golden Gate Bridge from her classroom. Although that day the full view is obscured by fog, this symbolic fog represents a shadow cast over the iconic image of this fascinating place, admired by tourists and visitors from all over the world. So again, looking at this passage, think about if you could use this passage, even if you're not using the whole book, see how you can sort of look at the symbolism. I think always when we look at these books, looking at the symbolism can help the students to sort of approach the main issues. Okay. So here we have Maya speaking. Okay. My next class is science, and the classroom is upstairs from the art studio. But what's cool about this building is that the stairs are outside. As you're climbing up them, you can see out to the Pacific Ocean or the Golden Gate Bridge, unless it's foggy and the bridge is totally hidden. The sky is grey and getting greyer today, but we aren't completely fogged in. So I can see part of the bridge, but it's impossible to see all the way to the other side. I suppose anyone trying to cross it right now has to believe there's something there. So I thought I could find a picture there of that Golden Gate Bridge there. So you can sort of see that we're talking about something, the iconic picture, the Pacific Ocean, the Golden Gate Bridge we have, but fogginess, maybe indicating a little bit about that, something obscuring the city, the beauty of the city. Okay? In CLIL, okay, for this book or other books, or even without a connection to a book, could be researching the city, okay? Researching San Francisco in this case. It's quite a historic city with gold rushes, the hippie era, certainly, and then even now with the tech companies not far down the road, okay? So research and illustrate geographical features, attractions, and places of interest in San Francisco. Another thing could be imagining an interview. Imagine you're a journalist, you're investigating homeless shelters with interviews, testimonies, and reports. Again, this could be something even to not necessarily always imagining about San Francisco, but homelessness is a problem, unfortunately, in our own cities in these days. So, thinking about these, but they could do a bit of research about homeless shelters in America, the problem of homelessness. I'm sure not only this book, but a lot of things they read and TV shows and films they watch include these topics. In terms of inclusive teaching, I think this is one of the real. Thank you, Marco, too. Why is San Francisco a famous tourist destination? So look at the tourist aspects of it. Okay, so they could do some research. I think this can be done for almost any city, that a city they want to visit, and then they have to tell us why they would visit it, plan out a few days, But obviously tying that together with some of the problems of the city would be possible too, okay? In inclusive teaching, this is a quotation from the author. She wrote that I ultimately decided that a story about empathy, kindness, and understanding that many people are going through invisible hard things was important to share. The author highlights the differences between Maya's life and that of a teenager living in a family considered to be normal. Okay, she does this by showing small details, simple gestures of everyday life, which show the considerable gap between Maya and her classmates. The expensive boots bought for ski week, the birthday parties with award-winning chefs. A stark contrast with the novel opening on Maya waking up and leaving her home before her mother, leaving her breakfast to her mother and sister. This is then added to during a pottery workshop, when working on a vase, Maya gets dirty from the clay and the stain is added to the other stains on her clothes. I think you'll see that young readers will really relate to how clothes can be a strong source of shame, pride or shame, obviously. But obviously one person's pride in their clothes can be someone else's shame in their clothes when they're criticised by peers. So not even so much bullying as much as just private shame. If someone doesn't have the right clothes, if someone has older clothes, if someone's wearing clothes that they received from their older brother or sister. It's, one of these topics, I think these great things about these particularly contemporary young readers' books is they really know how to approach these problems. And I think there'll be a lot to relate in them. For example, there's this part someone criticizes her or is speaking about her and says, hasn't her family ever heard of a washing machine? This is while she's living in the homeless shelter. So it's sort of this idea that I think a lot of teenagers feel this, that they're going through a period in which not everyone understands what's going on behind. Some activities in collaborating with the support teacher. So activities could be about inclusivity, bullying, and diversity. Okay. With support teacher could also be possible to identify a path of reflection on diversity issues. Okay. The activities we're going to propose involve the area of written production. Okay. With these two proposals, students will be able to practice writing, while at the same time they'll be contemplating the issues related to inclusion. So I think this is something we're always trying to bring in, that, when we're teaching writing, it's not enough just to say, write something, write a paragraph, write a page, whatever you like. I think I think a lot of teachers, let me know in the chat, but a lot of teachers will find that the more you actually give people an idea, even give them strict boundaries, those boundaries actually stimulate them to put them on the track. Okay, so if you're giving these things, inclusive teaching about bullying, about diversity, it gives them the opportunity to contemplate these issues that might not come immediately to mind. Okay. So another activity could be write a letter to Maya. Okay. So, imagine that you've read her story, or you've been told about her story. You've read the first chapter. As I said, you can find it free online. And, they could write to this person, giving them some ideas, saying, what I emphasize about you. Again, this could be a really good way of doing this with characters from TV shows, films, books. Write a letter to your favorite character, write a letter to even a famous person, things like this. Another thing is what's in Maya's bag. Okay? Maya's obviously a school child, so has a school bag, but something that makes her different to most of her schoolmates, all of her schoolmates, is that she's carrying pretty much all she owns in her bag. Okay, so someone needs to think of what objects are essential to you and which ones, like Maya, you would never part from. Okay, list them and describe what it is about them. Okay, that is really important, that is essential to you, special to you. Okay, so let us know also in the chat now. Are there things in your bag? Are there things that you never travel without? Okay? Are there things that if you were homeless, you would be the thing that you would take in your bag if you were leaving the house? So let us know. And these are sort of the ideas that I think when you do these writing exercises, it's always a good idea to brainstorm them first. What are some things in your school bag? When you go out with your friends, do you have things in your bag? What things do you have in your pocket? Obviously, people are going to say phone, keys, etc. But, are there other things? Can you imagine living out of your bag for weeks, days, weeks, months on end? Okay. What things would you need? What things would you take? Great way to learn new vocabulary. That they have to look up all these new words that are everyday objects. Another activity we're looking at here could be, in addition to these social inclusion issues, remember that the novel does also describe life inside an American school in great detail. Seems to be an excellent starting point to draw a comparison between the American and Italian school systems and how school life, rhythms, and environments can differ. These two activities that we're going to present vary from a traditional lessons in which the differences between the two countries' school systems are illustrated, but offer a more engaging approach to the topic. So we're not just looking at the differences, list the differences, how is it different in Italy and the USA, which again is something that I think you have probably broached in Scuola Media, Civics, English civics lessons, where we look at different school systems, where you look at different government systems. I think here we're going to have a bit more of a, active learning, participatory learning. Okay. One idea might be an interview. Imagine interviewing an American student about his or her country's school system. This interview method's intended to be a captivating activity, but at the same time, an in-depth study of certain topics. Okay. Could be done as pair work with both students playing the role of interviewer and interviewee. So it could be the Italian student interviewing an American student, obviously another Italian student, but pretending to be the American student, and vice versa. Imagine, it's an imaginative exercise that the students will have to do to imagine not only what life is like in America, but what an American would find unusual about Italian schools. Okay, again, these sort of things, they're opening their minds, they're opening them to other cultures, and they're giving them a real motivation to speak English. I think things like these interviews, I think it's always a good idea to break them up into sections. Okay. Brainstorm some differences between the countries. Okay, brainstorm some questions that you might want answered. Don't give them the answers, but at least questions that you would want to know about the American system. Okay, and obviously the same questions could be valid also for the person coming back. Again, an activity like this, while it's a good activity to fill up a lesson, to give them the question formation, intonation, all of these things, what I think is really important about these interviews is that effectively you're preparing them for a conversation that they may well have in the future. If they're studying abroad, traveling abroad, even meeting tourists in Italy, then of their own age, they're probably going to end up talking about their schools, about their life. And therefore, they've already got these questions up here that they've prepared. And, they've got the vocabulary, they've got the ability to answer the questions. So you're really preparing them for this work ahead of all the social occasions when they're really going to be thankful that they've learned enough English to actually be able to do this. Another thing is something we've looked at back when we did some writing, teaching writing, a school newspaper. Together with classmates, they could write a school newspaper article illustrating the main activities taking place in the school. In this case, it could be, the school that they're actually attending. It could also be a imaginary American school. It is quite common for schools in America and in Britain to actually have a school newspaper that maybe not produced so regularly, but every now and then. Okay, and people contribute articles. Remember that, with our web resources, things like that, it should be quite easy to actually get them to collaborate on these sort of things. There's a lot of collaborative websites. I've actually included some of them in the handout that you could use that help you plan a school newspaper, things like that. Could really be great. In the end, you have a short every person writes a short article, even in twos or small groups. And in the end, they end up with something that they can share with a lot of other people, and they can read other people's. And, a few pictures, a few headlines, formatting. It's a really nice document that may even inspire them to keep going in the future, become a journalist, whatever. Okay? As I was saying, not only a school newspaper for their own school, but it could also be an American school newspaper, so they could imagine these facts, events, activities taking place in an imaginary or real American school. Give it a name, give a geographical location. Maybe they've done the research on San Francisco about the tourist destinations, the things to see, but also the problems, and they can write about that. Otherwise, obviously, it could be something that they're going to write the Hogwarts school newspaper, something like that. Let us know in the chat if anyone's ever done this sort of school newspaper articles about what's going on in the school. Let me know if you've done it in the chat, because if you have, I think, I hope anyway, you found it a really valuable exercise. Okay? Just to conclude, as you can see, I think in this webinar, I've been trying to emphasize how just as text like this, Shelter is just one example, although it's a great example, it's a great book that students could read. Just one simple text can provide enough material for many types of lessons, okay? These approaches can be used with other books, or to be honest, other texts, any other text that you use, whether it's films, TV shows, songs, right? Particularly a lot of rap and things like that is about these sort of problems, about crime, about homelessness, okay? Racism, whatever it is. And so, looking at it from these different aspects, I think generalizing out from this one example, we can see how we could use this in so many other ways, okay? Adapt them, okay? Let me know in the chat, okay? So, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, okay, a bit of in a fantasy world to a certain extent, but, are there other books that could be approached in this way? Okay? Even when you get onto higher levels, whether we're studying Dickens or Shakespeare or something like that, even something like Romeo and Juliet could be approached in this sort of thing, okay? That we could look at it about, what are the problems of teenagers? What are the problems of effectively we're looking at gang violence in medieval Verona. Okay? These issues, things like homelessness, other social problems, poverty, crime, pollution, they're always rich topics for class discussions. Okay. So, looking at these in some sort of civics way, or even just that you're looking at it as a reason to get speaking. I mean, in our MLA materials that we use in the summer, our summer centres, they're often including these sort of topics, particularly things like pollution, social problems, designing cities, talking about future cities, talking about how we can improve schools, things like that. I think students are always interested in sort of discussing these problems, finding out more of them, giving their opinion. And I think the key to getting people talking, getting people using English, is giving them a good excuse to do that, giving them the not just the ability but the motivation to do this. So debates, discussions, conversations in class, as long as they're guided. I don't think it works so well if you just open it up and say, let's talk about pollution. I think it needs to be guided through with, could be a book like Shelter if you're going to be talking about poverty and homelessness. It could be something about, I don't know, films or TV shows if we're talking about crime, okay, even music, okay. Pollution, obviously, things in the news, the protest Fridays they're having here, okay. Starting with that, giving them some material, some vocabulary, working on to sort of brainstorming, maybe getting each person to answer specific questions. Okay, what types of pollution are there in your city? How do they cause problems? What are they caused by? Okay, before moving on to the more difficult part, which is, obviously solving these problems, which, no one's expecting the students to actually find a solution, but whether we're actually, discussing it enough, and I'm sure they will have a lot of ideas for solving it. Anyway, that winds us up. I just wanted to open up the floor a bit. So if you've got suggestions for future webinars, please put them in here. If you've got suggestions for future texts, because I wouldn't mind actually occasionally looking at a particular text, such as Shelter we have today, whether it's a text like Shelter that you probably haven't read, or whether it's a book that is quite common, or a film or something like this. We looked at James Bond films, I think, in one of our first webinars. We've looked at a lot of other different topics in particular with music, things like that, looking at particular ones. Okay. So, I'd like to occasionally focus on one text and see how fruitful this could be. But do let me know in the chat if you have other particular ideas. Okay? We're always interested. Anyway, thanks for your attention. Okay. Lucia has said she's interested in a course about storytelling. I think you'll actually find next week's one very interesting, because we're going to be looking at film scripts. Luca Delgado, who joined us last year, I think it was around May or something like this, he joined us to talk about acting, using acting in the classroom. He's going to join us again to talk about film scripts, and he's going to be joining us a few times this year. He's going to be talking about that on the 13th of October, next Thursday. So please join us then. Please remember that you'll receive your certificate of participation. Please email us if you don't. As I said, the certificate of participation counts as 4 hours, because there's a lot of extra materials, links, and things to do to fill out this. Okay, so I would imagine that you'll get at the very minimum 4 hours if you look at all the websites and the materials in there. Okay. The handout, as I said, includes all of those. So please make sure you pick that up. Okay. As I said, join us again next week. Okay. And finally, I'd like to remember to credit my colleague Francesca Tamani for all the material today. She prepared the slides. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to join us, but if you have enjoyed this webinar, it's really to the credit of her. Okay. Bullying and one of the film, another topic. So I will keep those in mind. Okay. Please join us next week with Luca. Okay. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you again next week. Bye.